Possibilities, a collection of essays on how things might be and a way to move forward, composed from my lived experience by me. Part 1. The Introduction, Tugging at the Seam. Thresholds of Coherence, from Quantum Variance to the Multi-Us. There exists a boundary that is neither poetic abstraction nor purely scientific reduction, a seam between coherence and chaos, from form and potential, identity and disillusion. What is being explored here is not a mystical leap between universes, but the moment at which a vibrating matter becomes structured reality, and how that same process scales upward into biology, organs, and the emergent plural self. In simple terms, this threshold can be imagined through the language of negative exponents and the imaginary unit I, a mathematical metaphor for crossing from stable material coherence into probabilistic variance. There is a point where vibration congeals into form, where motion becomes atom, where atom becomes cell, where cell becomes tissue, and tissue becomes organism. What appears as continuity is in fact a ladder of irrevocable phase shifts. Each rung of that ladder is not just a quantitative increase, but a qualitative reconfiguration. Essay 1, the first threshold, vibrating matter into structured atom. At the most fundamental layer, reality is a field of oscillation. Energy expresses itself as waveforms, probabilities, and fluctuating distributions. Out of this turbulence emerges the atom, not as a given, but as a stabilized pact between the force and constraint. An atom is not simply matter, it is agreement, a localized, repeatable pattern that has crossed a threshold of consistency. Prior to this, behavior is described in the language of quantum variance. After this threshold, behavior becomes predictable, modelable, constrained enough to serve as a building block. This is the first coherence law. From this perspective, quantum mechanics is not the source of higher complexity, but the chaotic substrate from which coherence becomes statistically viable. It is the noise floor upon which structure can be negotiated. Essay 2, the second threshold, from atom to biological function. Atoms bind, molecules stabilize, complex molecular configurations begin performing specialized roles. Suddenly, chemistry is no longer merely reactive. It becomes organized, directional, and purposeful. The leap from chemistry to biology is not metaphorically soft. It is a second phase transition, where randomness becomes regulation. Cells emerge as self-maintaining systems that resist entropy by creating feedback loops of repair, replication, and metabolic regulation. Here, the electrical gradients, electromagnetic differentials, and biochemical signaling coalesce into treatable, semi-predictable biological behavior. The moment this happens, variance has become function, and function becomes memory. The organ is negotiated collective. An organ is not a singular entity. It is a massive cooperative agreement of specialized cells, each following its own micro instructions while maintaining allegiance to a macro pattern. This is not mystical unity. It is regulatory governance at scale. Cells join, differentiate, specialize, and most importantly, they remain loyal to the larger structure. They encode the instructions for their own construction and iterate this knowledge forward through time. This is how the multi-us forms, not through singular command, but through layered absorption. A cluster becomes tissue, tissue becomes organ, organ becomes system, and system becomes organism. Each layer is a memory of successful coherence. Escalation, what is variance become predictable? The pivotal question is not when quantum fluctuation disappears. It never does. The question is, when does variance become statistically submissive to structure? The answer appears to be when feedback loops stabilize oscillation, energy gradients lock into recurring patterns, and redundancy reinforces continuity. Networks suppress local chaos. Predictability does not emerge by eliminating uncertainty, but by overwhelming it with pattern. Life, then, is not a denial of quantum chaos, it is a domestication of it. The multi-us identity as a layered coherence. The human being is not a singular self, but a nested alliance of cellular entities operating under a shared narrative of continuity. Individual identity is the surface coherence of this collective. Underneath a parliament of microselves sustain the illusion of unity. What we call I is a stabilized emergent story produced by oscillating coherencies that have remained aligned long enough to feel continuous. Psychological destabilization, breakdowns in identity, or altered states represent disruptions in this coherence. Hierarchy. The same threshold logic that governs atomic stability now governs consciousness coherence. The self is not absolute, it is conditional alignment across symptoms attempting to agree. Toward a fractal theory of coherence. What appears from this thread is a recursive architecture. Quantum variance, atomic coherence, chemical regulation, cellular self-maintenance, organ specialization, organism identity, social multi-organism, culture, and civilization. Each level emerges when a threshold of a negotiated stability is crossed. Each level is built upon the disciplined stabilization of chaos. The imaginary unit I becomes symbolic here, the mathematical trace of what lies beyond the stable access of material certainty, not an alternate reality, but the scaffolding of possibility. In conclusion, the treaty of being. Existence from this lens is a continuous treaty process, a pact between destabilization and constraint. Coherence does not arise because the universe demands meaning. It arises because certain configurations become statistically reinforced across time. An organ is a treaty, a self is a treaty, a species is a treaty. To be human, then, is to be a stabilized storm of cooperation, temporarily ordered against the abyss of variance. Not a singular entity, but a molecular democracy holding form against dissolution. And within that, consciousness is a story that tells itself about the agreement it never truly commanded. That is the end of the introduction, Essay 1 and Essay 2. Next up is Essay 3 in the next video.